The serpent in one pictures Satan,
Yeah, no.
right?
It's a picture of sin.
Yeah, and when Christ was placed on the cross, he said he became sin
Right.
for us, that we might
really
become the righteousness of God,
Yeah.
right? It's a really neat picture, right? But we can't take verse 16 away from verse 14 because they're too connected, right? And but many people do, and among Baptist circles, we don't experience too much of that, but in a lot of the high churches we would, and that, so so to me it's always been a sticking point there for me because of that, because much of what I believe in other things would be in complete agreement with these same Reformed Christians, and but that's one of those points that I just can't agree with. You know, Christ was offered up; he was given, not to live for us, but to die for us. Right? And that's the thing. So, and that's a real simple one. If you want to turn to Isaiah 53, then we'll get to a more complex one. And this is the keeping the verse in context with the passage. Now this one, in John 3:16, we only went back 2 verses. In Isaiah 53, it's not that easy, just going back a couple of verses, because we have to remember that the Bible was not written originally with chapter divisions and verse divisions. Each book was a complete narrative, and like when they have large portions of the scrolls of Isaiah from the Dead Sea Scrolls and different things. When they just unravel that, it's not divided up into all these. The Book of Psalms is, because it's a number of different
It's like
Psalms,
YouTube.
right? It's like YouTube. That's what it has to be. But
Break
the rest of it,
break it up.
exactly. And we broke it up to make it easier for us to turn to such and such a verse and chapter. But the problem with that is that a lot of times when we start looking at the context, we want to keep the verse in context with the passage. We stop at the chapter, right? And we can't do that, because when we get to chapter 53 of Isaiah, who hath believed our report? And this is verse 1. And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? Well, who is he talking about? Right? You have to go back. And this one's not too bad. We can go back as far as Isaiah 52:1, and we can get the context there. And he says in Isaiah 52:1, Awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion, put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city. For henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Now when he's speaking to he's speaking to the city of Zion, to Jerusalem, and he's saying that there's not going to come into you any who are uncircumcised and unclean. Who is Isaiah speaking to? Because the uncircumcised are the Gentiles, right? So the circumcised we know are the Jews. When he's speaking to the city of Jerusalem, this is the Jewish city. This is their holy city. This is the city promised to Israel. So Isaiah is writing to Israelites. He's not writing to Gentiles, right? The book of Isaiah, in its totality, is written to Israelites, and much of it is written to Israelites who are under oppression by the Assyrians, by their enemies, and they're under the thumb of their enemy. They've been taken into bondage, and Isaiah is telling them, as a prophet of God, about a future day when Israel is going to be returned to their city, Jerusalem, and they're no longer going to be under the thumb of an oppressor. They're going to be freed from all of their bondage. And when they come into the good of this, and we can see here as you get into this, like in verse 8, thy watchmen shall lift up the voice, with the voice together shall they sing, for they shall see eye to eye, when the Lord shall bring again Zion unto Israel, unto the Israelites, unto the Jews. He's going to bring them back into their city. And when they do, it's going to be with their king, the Messiah. This is speaking of a future day of the millennial, we refer to as the millennial kingdom. And this is going to be after years of Israel having rejected their Messiah. They have been under the oppression of the Gentiles, and God is going to tell them to awaken. And he's speaking to a remnant of them. You'll get that when you read through this passage. He's speaking to a group of Jews who have lived under oppression, who have lived under tribulation. And when they are freed from this, they are going to come face to face with their Messiah. And when they see him, in verse 13 of chapter 52, God is saying, "Behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high, as many were astonished at thee. His visage," and there he starts to describe him, "his visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than any of the sons of men. So shall he sprinkle many nations. The king shall shut their mouths at him, for that they had not been told them for that which had not been told them shall they see, and that which they had not heard shall they consider." And then when you come in here into chapter 53, verse 2 at the end of it, "And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is a man despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not." Remember when we read in John chapter 1, "He came unto his own, and his own received him not." This is them remembering, back, we saw him, we despised him, we rejected him, we didn't want anything to do with him. And it says, "And then they say, as the nation of Israel, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows." Right? And there are three things, and it's important to keep this in mind, that he's speaking of Jews who have been under oppression. And this is really, when you look at the book of Isaiah, you really begin to see that this is really pointing towards the time yet to come, what we refer to as the tribulation period, and they're going to enter into their kingdom, the kingdom of God on earth. Christ is going to set up his kingdom on earth. And we can read about this in Romans chapter 11. Paul says to the Gentiles, "You think you're blessed now? You think you're blessed now as Gentiles? Well, Israel's been set aside. Just wait until Israel has been given their rightful place on earth. When they're seated in the kingdom," he said, "it's going to be like the raising the dead back into life." We might experience God's blessings today, but it's nothing like the Gentile nations are going to experience when Israel is in their land with Jesus as their king, and his blessings are poured out over all of the earth, right? But there's three things in this chapter, Isaiah 53, that are taught. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just going to say that they shouldn't be taught from this chapter. One is universal atonement. The other is limited atonement. Two competing doctrines. They both use the same passage, right? So one of them at least is taking this out of context, right? And then another one is, what did the atonement actually accomplish? And these are three things that are taught here that really shouldn't be taught out of this chapter, because this is the nation of Israel, which Paul describes in Romans 9 and 11 as a remnant. And they come face to face with their Messiah, and they say here in verse 4, halfway through, "Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted." Here he is. He's our Messiah, and remember what Paul says. That anyone who hangs on a tree is cursed. He's smitten of God, is the way they view Jesus Christ. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. With his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. And see, some people take this verse and they say, "See, Jesus died for every man equally." But whether that's true